Hey, welcome to the Crow Discovery Project. I guess fair warning, I see in my stats that a lot of young people come here, which is why I try to keep the language cleaned up. I'm going to talk about things that could change a worldview, and that's not really my job to do with other people's children. So maybe you'd want to watch this clip before you let children watch this clip. Anyhow, I'd like to thank the translators who took all the time to take the Russian research and translate it into English. And I'd like to thank Alexander, who I believe is called Hattie Bow. It might be Hattie Bow, but I will say Hattie Bow. He's passed away in 2011, but the research he did is really, it's incredible. It's mind-blowing. So I have not made many claims on this channel to date. Today that's going to change a little bit. In the past I've given my opinions or best guesses, and I have always dialed back, waiting to have a little more than just my word back up what I was going to say. So today that's going to change a little bit. Having said that, many of us understand that we're living in a very created system. We see traces of this through the false flag attacks, the lies, the encoded storylines in movies. There's just an endless line of ways that we see the created system that we live in. The lunar wave relates directly to this, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I made a discovery of what I call the lunar wave in September of 2012, 3 days before the full moon, just after the autumnal or fall equinox. And while I may be the only person to have filmed the full event in the way that I did film it, I did not discover this. To put this into context, I was early on, having posted the lunar wave online, contacted by 3 people covertly who each claimed to be or have held positions that allowed them to know certain things that the general public does not know. Each of these people had confirmed that in fact what I had filmed was, well, a hologram, but two of them also mentioned that hologram was not the right word because that implies that it's like the technology that we would associate that with. But in short, that it's an illusion. What we're seeing up there is a projected or created illusion. The problem with this was that none of these people was willing to go on the record. They were all afraid to do so. So all this time, I have not been ready to step forward with everything I had come to know about the lunar wave, and so I wanted to mention that before we move on. So as we jump into this clip, I'm going to get one thing out of the way here. For a couple years, I've taken a lot of abuse because of the lunar wave clip, and I'm going to say some things today that will open the door for a lot of people who do not know how to communicate well to do that. So I'm going to say flat out, you're welcome to have whatever opinion you want here, but do it politely. That's the one rule here. And I would point out, I grew up in an academic household, but there are huge problems with the community of science. And I will demonstrate what that problem is. As an example, if you talk to almost anyone in a scientific field, they will tell you that the moon landings are real. That means that science has adopted this lie when in fact, using scientific method, if they were to go back and examine all that we have to examine, they could prove that the landings were faked, that the video and everything else we were handed about the moon landing was faked. This is the problem with science. And so when I present clips like this, we already know that they're going to be outside of the accepted topics for debate in science. And the same goes with eclipses. You know, I showed during the last round of lunar eclipses that they were manipulated. I showed that hundreds of satellites showed up on only these days while the eclipse was going on. I witnessed a lunar wave during an eclipse. The colors were wrong. We could see color with our eyes. We could see color with cameras. When we put telescope on it, there was no color. The timing was wrong. The start time, the totality time, it's a manipulated event. And again, scientific method for people who would choose not to swallow what is true and what is not, and to go look at these things and apply the scientific method, could actually demonstrate what I am saying here, that the moon landing was faked and that lunar eclipses, among other things, are manipulated. So to get it out of the way, if you come in on this clip and you have a differing opinion, that is fine, but be polite about it, and that's all I'm going to say. All right, it's a new day, and I'm going to continue the voiceover here, and let's get down to brass tacks. The fact is that I have come to believe that the moon that you see in the sky is not a rock in orbit. It's an illusion. It's part of the control system we live in, and frankly, I believe that part of the system that we live in is broken. I think it has been for a long time. There are other people on the internet talking about this, by the way. Now, to say this and to have conveyed to you that people have contacted me, you can all see the Russian research, which absolutely is directly talking about this. And this is from a man who held very secret positions, and people have referred to him or have said about him, if he was in the United States, he'd be richer than Bill Gates and would have had 3 Nobel Prizes. As a matter of fact, in his recent biography that I was sent, he apparently had the calculations per second for computer chips far beyond what we are right now, because he had solved some problems that are apparently still trying to be solved. At least that's what the bio says. So you can know what I'm telling you is true by research. This information is encoded in movies. As an example of this, the DreamWorks, intro into DreamWorks, where the kid is sitting on a crescent moon fishing, they show the moon reflected in water, and his little bobber comes down to earth, and I don't know whether he's fishing for souls or what he's doing. It's encoded there, and that is akin to the encoding we see in religion. Using Buddhism as an example, much of Buddhism teaches that the world we live in is an illusion. One of their favorite motifs is to talk about seeing the moon reflected in water, in a lake. And that is to point out the illusory nature of what we live in. To take this further, if you simply apply critical thinking to all the stuff NASA has handed us from space, you will come to understand that there are no real images of the moon from space. There are no real images of Earth from space. It is all created imagery in one way or another. And in the recent stuff that I've seen, much of it uses words that conveys that to you, but not in an obvious way. Another thing is, if you come to understand the endless line of things that are unusual or strange about our moon in comparison to what you've been told about other moons. But that in itself is problematic, because the entire solar system is in fact a created system, I have come to believe. At the end of the day, the easiest way for people to do this that don't have a lot of time to go out and observe the moon for themselves over long periods of time, which would in fact begin to let you know what I'm telling you here is true, pay attention to all moon references in art, in movies, in TV, in literature, in musical lyrics. All these things are encoding the fact that the moon that is above our head is in fact an illusion. It is not a rock orbiting the planet, and it is part of the control system in which we live. Many people understand that we live in very deceptive times. Many people, particularly on YouTube, are creating whole channels to cover the deceptions that we see, like the false flags, among other things. We're talking about the moon here, and it is part and parcel of the same deception that you are seeing down here. You need to step back, and instead of looking at an individual fake event, which I'm not telling you to disregard that, it is important that people continue to look at those things and tell the truth about them, frankly. But to step back and take a macro view of the deception we see down here, and just the it doesn't end. I mean, there are no edges to the deception that you are outlining down here looking at these individual events. The moon lie is part and parcel of the deceptions that we see down here, and I believe it is a key mechanism in the control system. According to the Russian literature, which will take me, I don't even know, years to get through and to try to understand on some level, and even have to change my point of view if I find much of that to be, you know, something that you can prove is correct. And some of it I just don't think you're going to be able to, other than these people were clearly in positions that let them know things that most of us don't know. The truth is that early on I said that there was a hologram covering something. The Russian documentation and research says exactly that, that there is a control system behind the moon connected with the sun. Now, I'm telling you the research someone else did, and I'm telling you that it's going to take me a long time to be able to go through that and try to digest and come to grips with what is being said there. But I do know for a fact, in my mind, my opinion, where I have come with all the research that I have done, that the moon is in fact an illusion, and it does seem to be covering something up. On my channel for a long time now, I've talked about the importance of equinoxes. I've said quite a few things about the equinoxes, trying to get people to go understand and pay attention to them. The Russian research really brings a whole new level to what I have been saying, in that it is very specific in the importance of particularly the spring equinox. And bear in mind that I filmed the lunar wave a couple days after the fall equinox in September, 3 days before the full moon. But in the Russian research, you got to go through it to understand what he is saying about the equinoxes, and all the way up to Easter, and Easter being a huge deal. And you should bear in mind that Easter is marked in every major religion in one way or another right around that time, which is the first full moon after the spring or vernal equinox. I would bring up the Easter quake of 2010. I've lived in Southern California my whole life, and that was among the biggest quakes that I had ever experienced. And I come to know now that these are not, I do not buy for a second that these earthquakes are just tectonic plates. I think what we are seeing here is, again, part of the major overall control system. That is my opinion. And this quake happened right on Easter, and when you begin to go through the Russian research and read what they have put forth, or what Hadibal has put forth with regard to the marking point of the vernal equinox, March 20 or 21st, to the following month or so up to Easter, or the first full moon, and then for the following 3 months, I mean, there's some pretty crazy outlandish things said. It'll take a long time to go through that and try to put it into context. But again, right now we are coming up to the vernal equinox. Right now is the time to film the moon. And also in the Russian research, where I have said, if you want to film the lunar wave, do it near a full moon. In this research, they specifically say that you can expect to see halos or something equivalent to my 2012 footage in what he calls the third phase of the moon. Now, so you can understand what this is in your head, look at my 2012 footage, which is 3 days before the full moon. That is apparently a critical time, and to understand what the Russians say is going on here, you'll have to read that documentation. In the translated Russian research that I have now seen 5 translated copies, and then I don't even know how many I did online with different tools, Hadibal talks about shadow ships in association with the moon. This is interesting to me because even over the past couple nights we have filmed 4 of these things that fit this kind of description. And for those that have followed the channel, we've seen everything from these kind of see-through looking donuts to the more oblong shadow-looking devices. Some of them look like they have speed blur, others do not, and yet they have this shadow look to them. In the Russian literature, this is talked about and associated directly with the moon. To me, it's clear now that we live in an artificial system. And I think this is why so many people have begun to pay so much attention to the fakery, the lies, the hoaxes, and just the dominance of media pushing this, pardon my French, crap out to the world. The moon is a big part of this system, or maybe I shouldn't say moon. The illusion that we see up there, because we can't see what's behind it, if there is something behind it, is a big part of this system. If Hattie Bao's research is correct, it'll also give you frames of reference for some things that I know people have really been working on. As an example of this, so many people have taken time to make videos on that quote from a plaque somewhere that has an owl on it that says, "Weaving spiders, come not here." In that Russian research, if you go into other documentation that this man created, amazing documentation, you will start to get a possible reference to what is being said in "Weaving spiders, come not here." And again, I've got a lot of work to do for a long time to go through and try to get a frame of reference and vet, in my mind, what's being put forth in Hattie Bao's research. But I just thought I'd put that out there because so many people have talked about that particular line from a supposed secret society from a plaque with an owl on it. Anyhow, let me wrap up here. All right, so in closing, I know what I've said here is going to hit most ears in a way that makes you think tinfoil hat, but I'm not going to make any apologies. I've been at this for a long time. I've been relentless in my research. I've been relentless in filming and observing the moon, and everything that's happened from the people I've talked to, from the people who have talked to me, to the culmination of being sent Hattie Bao's work and understanding that there were a group of people in some chat room talking about the lunar hologram and then referencing Hattie Bao's work, which was really the big deal, to get over there and understand that there are quite a few people who are aware of this, and I'm sure the ruling class and elites and many of the secret societies clearly are going to be aware of what I'm telling you. And again, I filmed this in 2012. I am not the discoverer of this. This is a well-known event by Lord knows how many people. So in closing, I'm going to take two translations, and I'm just going to run them through here on the video. I'll put up each page for about 5 seconds so that you can pause and read if you want. If you don't want to go through all that, this will be the end of the clip here. Again, this is a big deal for me because I'm actually changing the tone of the channel. I'm saying flat out, the moon is an illusion. It's not what you think. And that is where I have come, and that is what I currently believe to be true. So there it is. Come join me on the Examiner. The link will be in the description of this video. There will also be a plethora of links from the Russian research. And there it is. Cheers.